Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be in time and space, because believe it or not, this is time travel. Yes, it is, and time travel is space travel. That's something that the movies don't tell you. But yes, this is not a live broadcast, so you are listening to me through time. Even if it was a live broadcast, since the speed of light is finite, communication is not instantaneous, so it would still be time travel. That's a story for another time. But we are getting back to part 3 of Donald Trump's greatest hits. He is the most accomplished president since JFK, the only president in the past 50 years who has not been actively trying to sabotage America, in my estimation. And yes, I'm not a fan of Ronald Reagan. I don't know why people on the right like him. And looking at the political spectrum test, I take that every year. Depending on the questions you ask, I'm either slightly to the right or slightly to the left. But I don't understand why they like Ronald Reagan. After all, he's the one who flooded, or he allowed California to be flooded with illegals. And that's what turned it into a single party Democrat controlled state, which is what Joe Biden wants to transform America into. So yeah, Donald Trump is better than Ronald Reagan. Absolutely, Donald Trump is stemming the tide of immigration into America. He doesn't want to flood America, and we have information that he has cut immigration into America. So he is definitely better than Ronald Reagan on that accord. While you're at it, don't forget to like or dislike. You can hate this if you want. I'm not even mad at you. You can like, share, and subscribe. That's right, share this out to your enemies, share it out to your friends, share it out to Jack Dorsey and that stupid beard he has and the nose ring. He thinks he's like some sort of hippie or something. He went off to Bhutan and ate some mushrooms, and now he thinks he's Jesus Christ or something. You had to see it. You had to see the with Ted Cruz, the Zodiac killer, who's also grown a beard, grilling him as they're doing the antitrust case against, or they're thinking of it. The DOJ is thinking of bringing an antitrust case against Google Alphabet, the one of the four largest companies in the world, along with Microsoft, Apple, and the Chinese oil company, the state-run enterprise in China. Those are the four largest companies in the world. And while you're at it, don't forget to get a copy of my book, The Second Civil War, and it will still be relevant after the election. It will be relevant no matter who wins. It'll be relevant. It'll either be as just a history of, oh, this is the Donald Trump years, a wonderful history of everything he's accomplished, despite all the hardships he had to face. Or if he wins, we can see, like Rocky, we can see all the impossible odds that he had to overcome, and we can enjoy his victory a second time. We can relive it. So you can get a copy of my book regardless. It would still be relevant. But getting back to the accomplishments, his greatest hits. Another fantastic thing that Donald Trump has done, he has begun building the wall, and I have made a video about this separate topic, which I will link below, so I won't get into very much detail about it here. But Trump has built close to 400 miles of wall, and yes, it is a wall. And along with that, he has begun defunding sanctuary cities, which will help in deportations. So he is fixing the issue of illegal immigration. And along with that, there is also the issue of ending birthright citizenship. This has not happened yet, but this is something that is part of Trump's agenda, and it has to follow on the heels of fixing the immigration system. And now that Trump has 3 Supreme Court justices, now that he has the Ninth Circuit under control, and he has about 300, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, he has about 300 federal judges that he has appointed during his term, thanks to all the vacancies that Obama had left. Now he has remade the judiciary, and he is able to get these policies passed. That's something that he couldn't have done in 2017. It had to happen on the heels of fixing the judiciary. This is something that a number of Trump's critics don't understand. You have to do things step by step. You can't just wave a magic wand and, with a pen and a stool, as Obama said, just dictate rules by fiat. That's something that Obama was able to do because he had a complacent Congress and judiciary. Trump didn't have that in the beginning of his term. He had to create it. He had to get allies on his side and put in a number of court judges in order to have that kind of power. He's gotten 3 Supreme Court justices: Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and now Amy Coney Barrett was put in entirely along partisan lines. I've got another video about that linked below, so I won't go into too much detail there. But that is unreal. He has now changed the balance of power in the federal judiciary for the next 30 years. You know, all of those leftist judges who hallucinated rights into the Constitution. You know, they hallucinated that Obamacare was legal. They hallucinated that abortion is legal. They hallucinated that gun control is legal. They hallucinated that gay marriage is legal. They've hallucinated all of these things. No one voted on any of this crap. It was all leftist judges hallucinating rights into the Constitution that the founders would have found abhorrent. Now Donald Trump has fundamentally changed the federal judiciary, and we can actually begin to push back against the leftist degeneracy that we have seen over the past, especially the last 30 years, since Bill Clinton has gotten into office. This is enormous. Now there is actually a majority in the Supreme Court that favors the U.S. Constitution and doesn't see it as a living document that you can mold into your own socialist dystopia. And another big thing that Trump has done is he has reinvigorated America's space program in creating the Space Force. This is the first new branch of the military to be created in 72 years. Now, TV comedians, smooth brains, low-T randos who need 17 staff writers to come up with Plod Turd Man may joke about this, they may mock him, but the reality is that both China and Russia are ramping up their own military space programs. And they have begun testing hypersonic weapons that are years in advance of where the United States is now. You know, those new hypersonic missiles that they have, you can't shoot those down. You can't launch another missile at them to shoot them down. The only thing that could have potentially stopped them was the airborne laser, which is something that under Obama was canceled in 2011. So the United States is actually at an enormous disadvantage when it comes to space travel and the militarization of space, and also the civilian aspects of space travel as well. And I know how much that both the right and the left hate Russia because they're stuck in the Cold War. So I'll really harp on the Russia point for now. Do you really want the Russians to overtake America in terms of space-based weaponry? Do you want Russia to be able to hit American troops stationed anywhere in the world in under 30 minutes, or your pizza's free? Do you want the United States to develop countermeasures for these new Russian weapons, or do you want to just complain about collusion? I would actually be looking to counter the Russians instead of just complaining about them. But we all know these people are on the take. Joe Biden is on the take. The Lincoln Project was founded by a member of Rosatom. These people are all phonies. They're all hypocrites. But more than just the military aspects, Trump's push to get the U.S. back into space will pay civilian dividends as well. Have you heard of GPS? U.S. air travel is dependent upon a constellation of satellites that keeps track of everything. So is telecommunications. Russia, China, and now India have anti-satellite weapons that could destroy America's GPS and telecommunications satellites and would strongly reduce our capability of launching a retaliatory strike, since our missiles and jets would no longer be able to locate their targets. It would also mean that our planes would be flying blind and our smartphones would become useless. More useless than they are now. On top of that, there's the financial incentive. It currently costs the United States $40 million to put a single astronaut into space. And up until May 2020, the United States had to pay that $40 million to Russia because Russia was the only country that had an active space program, except the Chinese who had reverse engineered Russian technology that they stole, but we wouldn't get anything from them. Believe you me. No, coronavirus is the only thing made in China that hasn't fallen apart in a month. Although, if we're looking at the death rate, it does look like it is mutated to be much less deadly, which is fantastic news. I know how much TV comedians and Washington think tank people hate Russia, so you'd think they'd be glad that Trump created Space Force. You'd think that they'd be glad that we saw the first U.S. astronauts be launched into space on a U.S. rocket from U.S. soil. But their Trump derangement syndrome is so bad, it is so terminal, that they find fault with Trump not giving Russia $40 million per astronaut. They find fault with that. They have so much cognitive dissonance. They hate Russia, but Orange Man bad. So even when he's hurting Russia, he's still a Russian plant. Somehow. To quote Joe Biden, that is absolute malarkey. Come on, man. But the reality is the United States has fallen dangerously far behind when it comes to space exploration. NASA had plans for a Mars mission in 1986 with the colossal NERVA nuclear rockets that were successfully tested in the U.S. desert. And in fact, I'll link below to video footage of this, a wonderful documentary on this program. The Mars mission was scrapped when Congress decided it was better to kill Vietnamese children than to allocate the $10 billion necessary to launch the NERVA rocket. There were plans to send manned missions to Jupiter by the 90s, and our nearest star Proxima Centauri by the early 2000s, using nuclear rockets that we actually tested and built in the 60s and 70s. We actually, 50 years ago, sometimes 60 years ago, we had rockets built that could take us to Mars. We had rockets built that could take us to the stars within a single human lifetime. We had all this, and they scrapped it. LBJ scrapped it. We could have been a true multi-planetary species. Donald Trump could have really been the God Emperor of mankind. We're not living in a Star Trek future or in a Warhammer future, whatever your favorite sci-fi franchise is. We're not living in that future because the Democrats scrapped our space program. Bill Clinton did his best to axe the International Space Station. He did his best. He canceled the superconducting super collider that the first George Bush set up. We could have discovered the Higgs particle 20 years ago. But the Democrats have canceled all of our major science programs. Why do we have to import these H-1B visas from other countries? Why do we have to import scientists from other countries? Is because Democrats have destroyed our own science programs. The Democrat Party is the anti-science party. And we're seeing this. We're seeing they're the anti-science party with these bullshit lockdowns. We're seeing they are the anti-science party when they believe that if you chop your genitals off, you can magically change your sex. They are the anti-science party, not the Republicans. The problem with the Republicans, and I'm not a Republican, I can't stand them. I can't stand the Bush-era Republicans. I can't stand the world policing. I can't stand their tax and spend schemes from the Bush era. I'm not a Republican. But the thing about the Republicans is they're very reticent to actually do things when they have a mandate. I would gladly take the party of incompetence over the party of anti-American evil any day. And that's why I even if Donald Trump wasn't in office, I would have to reluctantly vote for a Republican just to keep the socialists out of Washington. And speaking of socialists, I'll get to the final accomplishment that I will get to in this series because it is getting very long, and that is banning critical race theory. In September of 2020, Donald Trump ordered the removal of critical race theory from government training. Now, the Democrat Party and the lamestream media are furious because this is the central dogma of cultural Marxism. They like to call this racial sensitivity training, but it is nothing of the sort. It is criminally evil, anti-white racism that claims that all white people are racist and that only white people can be racist, and that it is impossible to cure white people of racism, that white people are born with some magical bullshit substance called privilege, that means a white homeless person digging out of a trash can for scraps is somehow more advantaged in life than Michael Jordan, despite Michael Jordan being famous and having $1 billion. Critical race theory also asserts that ideas like hard work, being on time, saving money instead of spending it as soon as you get it, an intact two-parent households where both parents take an active role in raising their kids. They say that this is all part of whiteness and that society must abolish these things. Society must abolish families, intact families. They want to turn everything into Detroit. They want to turn everything into Camden. They want to turn everything into Chicago. They want every city to be burnt to the ground. As I've mentioned in my second Civil War video, the riots will escalate if Joe Biden takes power, because that's how they will push him further and further to the left. Donald Trump is the only person who can stop the riots. He is the only person who can stop the riots. Do you think that you can stop the riots if Joe Biden takes power? Do you think that you, with your couple of guns, can stop a horde of rioters if they come to burn your house to the ground? You might be able to shoot a few of them, but you can never kill them all. You can never stop the police once Joe Biden sixth them on you and has you arrested for shooting the poor innocent fiery but peaceful protesters who didn't do nothing. You couldn't stop the National Guard if Joe Biden sends them to confiscate your guns. It would be a losing battle. We need Donald Trump and his weaponized Department of Justice to stop the riots. We need him to stop the Second Civil War. The Democrat Party has already started a second civil war, and by voting for Donald Trump, you are voting to end the second civil war and the restoration of American values. Now, critical race theory says it is not enough to be non-racist, which is what Martin Luther King said. A non-racist treats someone based on the content of their character instead of the color of their skin. No. You have to be anti-racist, which means that you have to be actively racist against white people to make up for the alleged history of oppression, which doesn't exist. And I'll make a separate video about that. I'll make a separate video about the real history of slavery. And apparently being anti-racist also means being racist against Asians, too. The DOJ is investigating Yale University because they said there were too many Asians and whites attending. There weren't enough blacks attending the school. So they had to create racial quotas, which is a violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. And they had to say, no, too many Asians, you're not allowed. We need to take more blacks in, even if they're not qualified. By abolishing critical race theory, this is, along with making it easier to fire federal employees, these may be the most important steps Donald Trump has taken in ending the left's stranglehold on our culture and their political power. If Trump is able to kill racist identity politics in his second term, then we can actually move toward racial unity. And if we have racial unity, if we have everyone united against the left, then we can kill socialism. That's why Trump has proposed giving $500 billion in loans for black business owners, his platinum plan that he was working with Ice Cube, and that's very important because that, as I've said in part 1, is breaking the back of Democrat control. He is taking those natural Republican voters, the black community, who were Republican for generations, and he is taking them away from the Democrat Party. It is said that if the Democrats lose 20% of the black vote, then they will never win another election again. And that is what Trump is doing. You really have to look at this strategy long term. The corruption and degeneracy in America took generations. It can't be fixed in 3 years. Don't forget, black people were overwhelmingly Republican before LBJ bribed them to get their votes in the 60s. They were hardworking, productive members of society, good Christian members of society. There was no epidemic of black crime that we see today. They were good Republican Christians, good American Christians, and we can bring them back to being our allies. We can do that. Donald Trump is doing that. He can end this cycle of violence, but only if you vote for him on Election Day. And I'm going to end that there because this is very long. And I could spend hours talking about everything Trump has accomplished. This is just a sample of it to fire you up and to give you hope. Thank you for your time and good night.